James, that section. I had asked her the question, if she didn't know about the acre law, and if she did know about it, why had she chosen not to speak up? I didn't get an answer, but I like that entering into the minutes.
Thank you. Any additional discussion or comments?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Any seconds?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. We have one action item on our agenda this evening, and that is the zoning ordinance task force update. I believe Samantha is here to walk us through it. Samantha?
Thank you. Good evening. Hi, everyone. Good to see you again. I know I was before you just last month, but a lot has happened based on your feedback and the feedback from the public. We took all that to the task force, so I'm here today to present on behalf of the task force on the edits that they made to the final draft of the zoning ordinance that are reflected in the final draft that is before you today. So Robert, on the second slide. No worries. I just want to remind everyone of who is on the zoning task force. So 4 of you are on the zoning task force, in addition to a representative from the school district, a local planner, and business owner, as well as residents. On the next page, this just goes over what I like to discuss tonight. So I'm just going to start with the process to date and then the upcoming meetings, just in case anyone needs to leave. That's important information to have. Then we're going to go over the zoning map, notable changes between the draft and the final draft map, and then the same thing with the we cannot go over the entire ordinance in a lot of detail, so we're going to spend time just making sure that you understand the differences between what you saw back in June and what you've been looking at since then and what's before you today. And then we'll end with the adoption process. So going down to the timeline. So we did kick this process off in the summer of 2024. We've gone over this process in great detail before, but I do just want to point out that there's been 4 public outreach meetings throughout the process. These have been kind of like workshops and open houses with the community to discuss different points in the process. And then we've also had 4 public meetings before bodies of the township. So we've been before you 2 times. We're before you tonight for a 3rd time, and then we presented to the Board of Supervisors back in July. There are 3 upcoming meetings that we are going to zoom into on the next slide, just so you're aware. So at your next meeting on October 22nd, this is going to be the official adoption process public meeting that's noticed according to the municipality's planning code. The purpose of that meeting is for you all to make a recommendation on the adoption of the zoning ordinance and map that will then go to the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors will receive your recommendation along with the final draft ordinance and map on October 7th or 27th. This is not their regularly occurring meeting, so it's technically a special meeting. But the purpose of that is for them to receive your recommendation and then make a motion to send the ordinance and map to the Chester County Planning Commission for their review. And that kind of starts a 45-day public comment period before the public hearing in December, which we're aiming for December 15th. This is an official public hearing that's part of the adoption process. And the purpose of that meeting would be for the supervisors to take action on adoption of the ordinance and map. Okay, so with that, that's all the logistics. So we'll get into the final draft zoning map next. So really there has not been a ton of changes or really any major changes between the draft and the final draft map. We still have the same districts, your parks and open space district, 3 residential districts, low, medium, and flex. and then a series of mixed-use districts, mixed-use corridor, village center, village gateway, and the innovation district. In addition to your special districts, your enterprise, which is like a type of industrial district, and then your airport district. There is a couple areas that the task force discussed at their last meeting. They discussed a request from the public about the boundaries of the enterprise district and what it would look like to extend those further south. So the task force did discuss the merits of that, but it was believed, the township believes that with the use definitions and changes to the use definitions for agriculture, which I'll get into in a little bit more detail, that kind of addresses the requests for we don't need to necessarily extend the district because the use permissions in the residential low density meet that need. So we'll get into that in a little bit when we talk about uses. But the other area that they discussed is kind of this, let's see if my clicker works. This area here along Limestone Road, it's kind of in a hatched color. It runs between Route 41 and Southwood Road. And this has been an area of considerable discussion, both with the task force and then public comment that we received. So the task force is proposing two options for the Planning Commission, Chester County, and the Board of Supervisors to consider. So on the next slide, you'll see those two options in a little detail. So the first option is to keep it as the Innovation District, which was what was proposed in the draft. We discussed the Innovation District as an area where it's similar to the current Unified Development District, and that it permits kind of a flexibility of uses. But the real goal here is kind of more campus style, employment center type uses. The second option is a different zoning district. So we didn't think that a mixed use, like commercial heavy district made sense here. And we heard feedback that the Innovation District might be a little too intense. So to reflect the uses that are there currently and in a lesser intensity than the Innovation District, the task force proposes a light industrial district. This maintains the existing uses that are there and then also permitted in the Unified Development District and aligns more with that community proposal that was submitted by a nearby neighborhood. Okay, so those are two different options. I should note that while the Planning Commission, you're welcome to make a recommendation, of course, on a specific option that you prefer. Both options will be sent to the Board of Supervisors in Chester County for consideration. Okay, in terms of main differences between the draft and the final draft of the ordinance, I'm just going to take you through article by article. We're skipping over Article 1 because there weren't a ton of updates there. I'll make a note on that in the past or at the end. But the first big article that we had changes to was the definitions article. So in the draft version, we kept the definitions for uses right next to the supplemental regulations for that use. However, we received feedback that might be confusing if some definitions are in the use section and not in the definition section. So we moved all use definitions to the definitions article. We also received comment about a use that wasn't really defined, and that was the construction trade and contractor office use. So that aligns with our craftsman industrial use definition. So we just added that as an example of that type of use to make sure that was covered. For Article 3 districts, this is where all the bulk and area standards for the districts are outlined. We first removed the flood hazard overlay district. This was an overlay district that is in your existing zoning. However, since that zoning had been put in place, the township adopted a floodplain ordinance that was reviewed and approved by the state and the township that kind of covers everything that was in the overlay district chapter, and we didn't want to have any confusion. So the floodplain hazard overlay district was removed from this article And the floodplain ordinance will just take precedent in terms of those regulations. We also adjusted dimensional regulations for districts that had minimum setbacks for accessory structures that were less than the principal structure. So making sure that accessory structures couldn't be in a front yard. We did add a provision for front yard averaging. This is basically gives the flexibility that if the minimum setback for the district is maybe less or more than the prevailing yard pattern, so like what's happening on the adjacent properties, then you have an opportunity to adjust that setback. So basically you're maintaining the same character throughout the block. Excuse me. We also adjusted slightly some dimensional regulations for different housing types and non-residential uses based in the mixed use district, so that mixed use corridor, Village Center and Village Gateway. And that's just to, we got some feedback from people who do development every day, and it just makes it more feasible to build the types of uses that we want in those districts. And then we added a section for the light industrial district for you all to consider if that's what you want along Limestone Road. Going into uses. So this is probably the biggest article that, or where there were the most changes. So first, we edited language to be really clear that the one principal use on a parcel, or more than one principal use on a parcel, should only apply to the mixed use industrial and residential flex districts. We also moved all these regulations regarding manufactured home communities from the SALDO to the zoning ordinance, just so it was all in one place. We updated the use definition, which is now in Article 2 for stadium and arena use, and the supplemental regulations to align with what the township recently passed in terms of the text amendment. We also added language to clarify that accessory structures, I mentioned this for the districts as well, it's reiterated here in the uses that accessory structures are only permitted in the side and rear yards, not in the front yard. And then the task force spent a lot of time reviewing the use table and making sure that the use permissions aligned with the intent of the district. So there were some changes between maybe a use was permitted by right, and they thought that maybe it would be more appropriate as like a conditional use or a special exception. So they went through the use table and modified some uses. And then probably, a couple more. We added a supplemental regulation for self-storage facilities that regulates proximity so that you don't get an abundance of this type of use right next to each other. And then finally, this for the Innovation District, this is an area near the airport. If you remember on the map, it's that area in blue. It's really the township's main opportunity to economic development opportunity. And so the task force didn't want to see it just becoming a large sprawling subdivision. So we added a supplemental use regulation for single unit detached dwellings in this district that would basically limit the ability to do a large sprawling subdivision. However, it allows existing property owners that might have a single unit detached dwelling that they might want to subdivide and sell to a family member or something else to do that kind of on a smaller basis. And then finally, we discussed this last month, but just want to reiterate the changes to the use definitions for agriculture. So instead of having agricultural uses for crop farming, crop storage, livestock, mushroom-related agriculture, et cetera, we consolidated these into 3 definitions. So normal agricultural operations, this definition comes directly from the state law. Composting operations, agricultural, this is the mixing, composting, processing, aerating, or similar use of any composting materials of which at least 50% or more is used on the property. And that's differentiated between commercial composting, in which the same, it's more than 50% is used off-site. So that's kind of the difference between those two. The agricultural uses, the agricultural composting operation and the normal agricultural operations are permitted in the residential low density, medium density, flex, as well as the enterprise district. Okay, the next article, historic preservation. So this was an article that staff worked with the Historical Commission on closely. Three big things here. One, we changed the eligibility of buildings. Right now, it's to be eligible, you have to have been constructed prior to 1940. And we're saying right now, we're changing it to constructed or had a portion thereof constructed at least 50 years prior to the adoption of the ordinance. This increases the age range a little bit for eligible properties, but does not mean that the commission has to survey and list all of those properties. It just kind of broadens their authority if they like to consider it. Another thing was that there's some feedback that like people didn't know if their properties were on the list, the historic resource list or not. So we added a requirement of the township to issue written notice to all property owners on an annual basis to inform them of their designation. And then of course of Article 5 and all the regulations therein. And then finally, we added a definition for demolition by neglect and what that entails, and basically confirming that the enforcement standards of the ordinance apply to demolition by neglect. Okay, and then for all the other articles, there were not a ton of changes, so just a couple notes here. So for Article 1, this is the administrative article. We received edits from the township solicitor that we addressed, and it's basically to make sure that the procedures are in alignment with what you're doing now and the MPC. Article 7, parking and circulation, we received some comments from your township engineer that we addressed, very minor. Article 8 was the lighting article. The task force decided to move this to the Saldo. This is common. Lighting can show up in the zoning or in the Saldo. The main difference is that if it's in the Saldo, then the applicant seeks a waiver from the supervisors, whereas if it's in the zoning, they would seek a variance from the zoning hearing board. And this adds like additional costs to the applicant and the township if it goes through the zoning hearing board process. And then finally, there's a lot of talk throughout this process about nonconformities and kind of listing them and registering them. But per feedback from the township solicitor, the language regarding documentation of legal nonconformance was changed to that the zoning officer has the authority but not the obligation to register nonconforming uses, structures, and lots. Okay, so that's kind of an overview, but I'm happy to answer any questions at the end. I just want to end with kind of the next steps, which we went over, but these are just important dates to make note of in case, community members or neighbors have questions about them. Okay, with that, I'm happy to take any questions you have or wait to hear what questions the public has.
Yeah, I do. As anybody, like Mr. Hoops, has anybody gotten back to you with any of your concerns that you had?
things are progressing. Rezoning. I believe we've made progress, and perhaps we have a little more, I'm not sure, but, it's democracy, and I think it's work. But I'm not here to hurt anybody, harm anybody. I think we understand one another. Again, to answer your question, progress has been made. The main thing that I think needs to be reinforced and continued in the 7-year renewal will be ag security. That's been set in my mind. We have that. That's one positive. That's the big positive of the whole thing, to tell the truth.
Mhm.
And we had it one time, 5 acres, and I don't know if that. Big 12, 13.
So ag security, the ag security district is not a zoning concept. You may call me honey, it's okay, it's okay. Well, I think what has happened, Mr. Barkley, is that the law established that every 7 years, the districts were to be renewed, but there's a line in there that says if you don't renew it, it's presumed to be renewed. So in the early part, everybody, all townships were doing, every 7 years, they were doing a whole new one. And then everybody started reading that line because it costs money to file it with the recorder of deeds, and they just stopped. So I would say the last time it was recorded, those properties, as well as the ones that have been added since, are part of ag security unless somebody has to be out. So I think that's what you can look at probably. It's there now. We're good. It's there now. It's there. Agriculture is in the district.
You're correct. Thank you. Anybody else in our farming community have anything to add?
Come on up.
Right.
There's a button.
By why you're here and who you represent and what your status is, ma'am.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Miss Susan, just tell me, I'm the secretary. How do you spell your last name?
Bucknum.
Thank you.
And I've been retained as counsel for Laurel Valley Farms as co-counsel with Charles Gerbron. And I was retained because my law practice specializes in agricultural law and specifically local governmental regulation of agricultural operations. My background is I work.
Why don't you we understand your background.
Okay.
Everyone's familiar with it. Why don't you just say what you want to say about your client?
Okay.
Zoning ordinance.
Well, the current version of the ordinance, the definitions for composting between agriculture and commercial are preempted by the Department of Environmental Protection Solid Waste Management Act regulatory program for mushroom farming. And I've discussed this with Solicitor Sebastian, and it's my understanding that she's working on revisions to cure that problem. But we thought we'd take the opportunity tonight to just very, very quickly explain to the Planning Commission why there's a conflict with state law.
How about if you just wait a minute and if you just, and I'll go over something with the planning commission. How's that?
I'm
Is that
sorry, what?
acceptable? If you just want to wait and sit back down and I go over some things that I've prepared for the planning commission, and then that might save you some time.
Okay, very well, thank you.
Thanks. So planning commission members and Samantha, I prepared a definition of mushroom composting that is straight out of the Attorney General's, your opinion, as a matter of fact, in Franklin Township. I think that's enough. Susan or Samantha, you want to come get this? So I'm just going to read it. Mushroom composting. Mushroom composting, a mushroom compost operation, which is a part of a normal farming operation, shall meet the following conditions. The composting must be conducted on a farm or other facility that complies with the mushroom BMP manual and has an approved and implemented MFEMP. The compost must be made using only agricultural wastes or agricultural wastes mixed with associated co-products as defined and regulated by DEP, and all of the finished substrate must be used on a farm for the production of mushrooms. That's straight out of your opinion to Franklin Township. I think that covers it. And I would recommend that the board and consider this in terms of adding that to the definition section. So agriculture includes, whether you like Laurel Valley Farms or not, it is included in agriculture. This defines exactly what that is. Somebody else could compost strange things that have nothing to do with mushrooms or composting, and we want to keep a definition for those because that is different. But this is agricultural composting, specifically mushroom. I don't think anybody else composts for ag purposes. So I think that covers it. That's what I'm recommending we include as a definition in the ordinance. So it's agriculture, and this says, as long as it's this, we're good. Now, I cut you off, but I thought I would save us all time with that. And I don't know whether the board wants, or the commission wants to discuss this now or later. Samantha? So the two definitions there, I still want to keep a commercial composting because we don't want that to happen non-mushroom in any other place, but the agricultural composting will change and, and include this definition as I understand it from your decision for Franklin. Okay. All right, is that all right? So you're double teaming me now?
I just wanted to be clear, when you do that, and thank you very much, to just make sure that we're clear that there's the differentiation between compost production and spent compost too, because that's an issue that I think has come up. And I think it's the intent to include that. I just don't want there, whether it's Mr. Weir or somebody 15, 25 years down the road, you'll still be here then. 50 years down the road, you'll still be here, but 100 years you might not be. And I was hoping that it would be clear that would apply to.
I think this is a definition of fresh composting. If spent composting, there certainly are details about that. All I will say to you is that my recommendation to this township is that we understand that Laurel Valley makes people unhappy, but they're protected absolutely by the law. And we have no choice but to include them in agriculture as well as the spent mushroom compost. And my recommendation to this township, and I'm through it, they do not want to not comply with the law, is to make sure all of the definitions include that. So whether it makes everybody sad or not, that's what we have to do. And I am being double teamed, but that's where we are.
Well, under even the mushroom manual, it regulates the production of mushroom substrate to grow and also the composting of spent. So as long as we're covering our bases.
Yes, well, the definition that I put together here was for fresh, because that's that's where we were tonight, and I will work on the other. But yeah, this is, as I said, this township has no intention of violating the law, as much as many of the people who live there are unhappy with Laurel Valley and would love them to cut it out. We can't, so we know that. So, sorry I interrupted you, but I thought I would take care of at least a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, I can send you.
Okay, that's fine. I think there will be further modifications on the spent issue. This is fresh, though, and I think it's straight out of when Ms. Buckton was the Assistant Attorney General, out of her letter to Franklin Township, so that they came into compliance. So that's where we are. Okay.
It's actually.
It is. It's straight out of the mushroom, but you cited it, so I used your citations. Yeah.
Sure we cover the spent mushroom composting.
Yep, I understand. That's next on my list.
Thank you. Please.
I know I'm a small segment agriculture, but I compost on my farm too, daily. Inside, I got three barns that we use sawdust, and every day we aerate it with a tractor. Keeps the, you know how it circulates, and it goes
That-
through a heat process. But I do compost.
Is for mushrooms or other stuff?
No, but as far as composting, agricultural composting,
No, we're
compost.
done with that. Forget that. Forget
All
that.
right, well, I just want to let you know that I am not going to compost dead animals, because we almost have a zero. I have a zero tolerance to death in animals.
Okay, so just so I'm clear there, your composting is what happens to the end product?
The end product is trucked away right now. We're not using that sawdust because it has a tendency to lower the pH. And we use spent, because spent mushroom compost runs a pH of about 7.2, which is very positive. And I'm not going to put wood chips on, but it's very favorable. But we ship them on to people that can use that.
Is it used for growing mushrooms?
No,
No.
no.
Okay.
Might be good for azaleas, but no. But I just want to let you know, and I'm only minor, and I know once these laws get in place, even though there are only a couple of us in livestock right now, we do in a manner
Okay.
honestly compost.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from our neighbors? Please, sir. Could you come up to the podium, please, and tell us who you are, and so we can capture it for the minutes.
My name is Ron Lupo. I live in Landenberg Hunt. When you state with composting, they're breaking no laws, that's correct. They have no laws. State of Pennsylvania has not a law. They don't have to live by the same agricultural laws of a farmer who produce a cattle farmer or anything else. Because if they did, we wouldn't have that smell in this area all the time by this composting. So you can't say they're not breaking any laws when no law exists. I just want to make that clear. And any further composting in this area, you're just going to ruin this area. It's already been ruined to a degree. So I don't like to see any, when you say light industry, then you say, you said that they have to sell it strictly to the mushroom farms?
It is the preparation of compost to grow mushrooms.
And that's the fresh compost.
Fresh compost.
Then the spent compost goes where?
Spent compost, I'm still working on.
Because that is why we have so much truck traffic on Star Road from landscapers from Delaware and everywhere else. So obviously that compost is not being used on mushroom farms.
No, that's spent. That's different.
And one thing I want to say is they call it mushroom. They call it an industry themselves. It's called the mushroom industry. So why can't they live by the same laws that industry in Pennsylvania has to live by when it comes to emitting any kind of chemicals in the air and water?
I think you're speaking to the wrong forum, sir. You need to.
I know,
go to
but I have to
legislature.
express my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there additional questions or comments from our neighbors? Please, ma'am, in the back.
Anything. You can come to the podium. When I say anything related to the zoning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. The new.
I'm Rona Devane. I'm here as a board member for the Estates of Harrogate HOA. Before I begin my comments about rezoning, I just want to thank everyone who's been working so hard on this. I know the task force met kind of an extra meeting to deal with this. The Planning Commission, especially last month, just really great. The Board of Supervisors, Chris, the township employees, and Samantha for listening to the feedback and taking steps to address the issues that we have been presenting. So thank you for that. And specifically last month, I did say this too in the parking lot, what we've been talking about, just how respectful last month's meeting was. And for some of the members really raising some great questions and concerns, and we appreciate that. Although I'm here representing the Estates of Harrogate as a board member, the issues I'm addressing would affect our neighbors at Somerset and most significantly affect our neighbors at Harrogate and Harlow Point. I have been working tirelessly towards addressing these issues side by side with Claire Aiello. She's here. She's from Harlow Point. She's representing them tonight. And the suggestions we've made also were done in with the intention of helping the township too. So I will get to that. When we look at the Innovation District versus the now proposed Light Industrial District, okay, it's a better fit. A question was asked last month at this meeting, are there non-conforming uses that were presented in that innovation district? And there were over 50 non-conforming uses that were suggested to be in that immediate area. This alleviates, this light industrial alleviates many of those conflicts. Not all, but many. By creating the 11th district, the light industrial, it makes sense to the township too. And we brought that forth because we're not looking to unduly restrict the innovation district. So if you started taking things away from that to satisfy or conform with what exists down in Limestone Road, it then puts a hardship on those developers who might want to be building up north. It takes some flexibility away. For those who don't know, we didn't just seek to restrict what was going on in that now proposed light industrial district. We added things too, because we felt that the developers should be able to develop, but within what currently exists or the nature of that area. So I do want to say we didn't just look to restrict. According to what Samantha explained at the last task force meeting, the light industrial district should be more of a low impact area, especially for surrounding residential, smaller scale, and not generating a ton of traffic, which Limestone can't handle. We really appreciate that because it is different. We do have a couple of concerns, really two concerns that I'm going to talk about. And then Claire has one thing, I think. A biomedical facility and science and technology centers. With approximately 20% of all housing units in the immediate area, we would like to see those removed or at the very least permitted by special exception. These labs are heavily regulated. However, there have been quite a few breaches in recent history, and I'm talking, the past decade or dozen years in the US. We all know about Wuhan. We don't want New Garden to be known like as a Wuhan, and the 100 escaped monkeys that happened in PA, right? But I have a list here: smallpox from the National Institutes of Health, a laboratory in New Orleans, this crazy bacteria escaped, H1N1 in North Carolina, H5N1 in Milwaukee, cowpox, these are not things to just say, okay, they can come. If they're going to be putting in a biomedical facility or science and technology center, I believe that the township has an obligation to not allow it as permitted by use, but to put the highest level of scrutiny towards anything like that. The boards should know what is coming and be able to put things in place to make sure that the residents are protected. The last thing is I heard Samantha state that both options are going to be presented to the Board of Supervisors and the county. And we are asking the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors to accept the light industrial proposal with the suggested changes of those two things, either being completely removed from the district or as listed as strict scrutiny use. And we feel that this serves the interests of the residents, the landowners who want to develop, and the township as a whole. Thank you so much.
So you stated for the biomedical going with special exception rather than conditional use?
We would love to see it removed.
Yeah, I
Okay,
understand
but
that.
if not,
But
at the very least, it should be special exception. Quite frankly, I think it should be special exception anywhere in the township, but that area that houses close to, 20% of all
yeah, I'm
homes.
just curious as
Yeah.
the reason for the special exception over conditional use, just what's,
It's permitted right now
but
believe
why
it's-
would you go special exception over,
because, well.
over the
because a
conditional use?
Special exception would require the zoning hearing board and the Board of Supervisors, where conditional use would really only require one review. So it's the highest level of scrutiny.
That's good, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I believe I saw another hand out there.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Claire Aiello. I'm from Harlow Point and represent the 42 homes in my little cul-de-sac there. As Rona had mentioned, we've been working very diligently together on this, and I know that both Harrogate and the estates at Harrogate, as well as Harlow Point, haven't spoken to anyone in Somerset about this, but I believe that once I talk about this, they would agree as well. So, and everything that Rona had said about everybody's participation, we thank you as well. We were really pleasantly surprised when the 11th district was added. So thank you for that, and whoever had some input to that as well. So I wanted to focus on one item. I think there's 127 principals. I counted them. There's 127 principals. Rona was talking about the biomedical and the science and technology principles. I wanted to talk about the principal named Industrial Light, which ironically is the name of the new district. So anyway, so the definition of that principle is this: a use involving the production of goods from raw materials or the assembly of finished products that can result in limited negative external effects, noise, and other non-noxious byproducts. Light industrial uses can include those uses listed in Figure 200-2-5. So I'll be talking from this. I didn't count these, but I'm going to say there's 20 items. And I'm not talking about all 20 of them, because not all 20 of them to us are non-conforming to that definition. For example, agricultural processing, aircraft assembly and testing. I'm hearing noise as I'm reading the names. Biomaterials, doesn't sound non-noxious to us. Engines and motors, manufacturing, rebuilding, again, the noise factor. Lumber mill, mobile manufactured homes, manufacturing, motor testing, stone cutting and distribution. So those are the items, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's 8 items under that principle, which we believe does not conform to the definition that I just read. I'm hoping, well, if anyone disagrees, I don't know if you're allowed to or not in this forum, but unless I'm misunderstanding the definition or what these uses are, I believe that we're correct in being concerned about them. So with that said, we'd either like them removed from the list, or since the industrial comma light, and I say comma light because that's how it's listed here, be at least designated instead of permitted, but either designated as S for permitted by special exception, or C, permitted by conditional use. We believe that if that designation for that line item changed from permitted to either not permitted, which we know that that's an unreasonable ask because there are items on the list which do make sense, or at the very least be scrutinized, or these items be taken off that list. Anybody have any questions, or anybody disagree, or we're good?
Thank you.
That was it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Were any of our other neighbors like to share their thoughts or questions?
These two are right on top of things, and our community also agrees with their proposal.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much for coming out and for your thoughtful comments and remarks. We take them all very seriously. Okay. All right. Any additional discussion from the Planning Commission? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think Samantha covered our next, yeah, I think so. Sure.
About the historical, where are we at? Historical properties. When you talked about that, is there an area, a certain area, or is it throughout the township? Is that what?
So your existing zoning ordinance does have a historic preservation article, and we use that as the basis for the new zoning ordinance, just with the changes that I mentioned. It is not a specific district or geographic kind of area where all the structures and buildings within that area would be on the list. It is a list of historic resources, and the map is on the website. And those are the listed historic resources.
Okay, well, the only reason did this come to mind was years ago, and I don't know how many years ago it was now, but they brought, they marked different houses in the township that had historical significance. And I think some of the people who ended up owning some of those houses were a little bit, I don't know if you want to say it, they were upset, but if it has that historical significance, it does not allow them to do some of the things that they wanted to do to their home. and they wanted to option out or whatever. And I don't even know how far it even got. They brought it up. I don't know how far it is. And it was just for a brief period because that's their property. They should be able to do what they want. You just can't go in there and say, well, Columbus stayed in the basement there and that's where he slept in that cot. You can't remove that cot.
I
So-
think to answer your question, the historic preservation does have specific guidelines to allow the property owner to remove that historic resource. So it does give them the option if they do so want to do that. The part about this or the updates to it is that demolition by neglect is a little bit tougher than the language currently. So there's certain things that you have to maintain. You can't just let it run down
Well, yeah, I mean,
without some sort of violation.
there was times that, and I don't know if it's still in place or not, and you would probably know this, Robert, that if someone came in to demolish a home that in some people's mind maybe is,
Correct.
personally, I don't know if the 40s were historical, but the point was that they wanted to have the ability to go into that house and remove things like
The ordinance does say that, but it says that the property owner has to give the historic commission permission.
to do that.
Yeah, they don't have the right to enter.
That's available to do. They can.
Correct. It's still today, yes.
And I don't think it has any bearing on this, but it was. quite a
No, it
while.
was just, mostly was that neglect part.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks.
I had one item. Like as typical, when there's a variance application to the zoning hearing board, we get to make our opinion on it and pass it on to the supervisors. And in the one section, I'm not sure it's clear, then the supervisors make their opinion and pass that on to the zoning hearing board. It's not really clear whether our recommendation also goes to the zoning hearing board.
Actually, the municipality's planning code says that a board of supervisors may be a party for every application before the zoning hearing board. So the board of supervisors has the ability to state a position. The MPC doesn't give the planning commission that right. So in my opinion, the township is in a safer position to have the planning commission make a recommendation to the board of supervisors, who then have the ability to state a position in front of the zoning hearing board. So that's it. There's just no provision. I think traditionally there may have been that you went straight to them, but you don't have standing in front of the in front of the ZHB. So I think it's safer for all of us if now sometimes the timing doesn't work out, so work around that. But
It does.
generally speaking, that's why it has been my suggestion to make sure that's clear.
Right, it does say that in this draft ordinance, that if the timing doesn't work out, then our recommendation would go straight to the zoning hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way that it's been done is not probably being mostly compliant, but it has to stay within the 60 days. So it's done that way. But moving forward, yeah, you picked up on that one piece there.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, well, that is our action items for this month's Planning Commission. The next Planning Commission meeting will be held on Wednesday, October the 22nd at 7 p.m. And our September meeting is hereby adjourned. Thanks, everyone.